the thing which was kind of interesting to me from the process was how much you'd obviously worked on the production of the track, and you initially were just thinking, it's just basically just want a mix and all this kind of thing. But I always feel a bit like I'm a musician first, and the technical side of things has come later, and it sort of felt like actually just to kind of take it that step back and do a few little arrangement tweaks. Once I sort of had the stems from you, and to start thinking about, actually, are there any just little performance tweaks, the way we could just tighten up that, like the kick, the bass and the guitar chords in the chorus, just to be that sort of more synchronized and punchy thing together, and maybe just the odd little phrase in the vocal, which I thought, I'm sure if you did loads of takes, I'm just sure you've got alternative ones in there and things like that. It felt like a good time to kind of just say, I don't have to just mix what I'm given, we want to actually try and make this be as quality as we can. 100%. So it's kind of good to even just like address those little things before we get going. That was a cool process too. I love all that sort of side of things.
Yeah, that was what I think hit us when we first got the mix back, was that you'd taken it in quite a different direction to what we expected, but obviously it turned out to be great. The first impression that we got was that it was heavier than we were expecting, but that turned out to be great, because the energy was sort of turned up an extra sort of 20%. But we both come from quite a sort of rock alternative background anyway. We were happy to take it in that more sort of, it's almost sort of Muse with the big operatic backing vocals and everything. Yeah,
well, I felt like it just came from your voice, Beth. I just thought it was huge and powerful, and you feel like sort of let's not pussyfoot around this and hold everything back. Like it feels like it's meant to be kicking ass.
100%.
And sort of always feel a bit like you want to try and avoid just falling into a gap a little bit. If you think it's meant to rock, like, let's make it hit hard. If it's meant to be beautiful, then let's really make it pretty. I feel like you don't want to go sort of half measures with these things. And sort of just tried that. That was sort of the approach I took with all of it, really. And so Jeffrey just trying to get the kick and the bass and the guitars just like slamming together in the choruses. It also just gave space then for them to really step back nicely in the verses. It just made the whole thing feel more dynamic to me. And like I say, the song and the vocal were really dynamic to begin with, so it just felt like it was just leading into that.
What you did with it was so creative as well. I think that's what really struck us was, we've been really kind of toiling over this song for a little while, a bit too long maybe, and then you really came at it with fresh ears, and you did some really creative stuff, like leaning into kind of like the rock, and what you did with the vocal was so interesting and so creative. The way you kind of turned vocals, right? Made them really aggressive. Would you be able to tell us a bit about what you did, because that was amazing?
So an influence we discussed early on was the St. Vincent record from a couple of years ago. Initially I was just experimenting with it. I loved the roominess and slapbackness on the drums, and I sort of feel that having a touch of that slapback roominess sort of, it just feels like a touch of a blues sort of feel to it, and I felt that worked well with the vibe of the track generally. Initially I was actually just experimenting with it just on the drums to just try and use a sort of a slapback and amp reverb. I've got on the Morgan amp suites from Neural DSP, they have a Princeton model, and the sort of the reverb with a touch of slapback on that has this gritty amp, fuzzy around the edges feel to it.
I love that.
And I liked on the drums there, and I was like, try it. I like that vibe, let's try it on loads of stuff. And so that's the main thing that's on your voice, is to have a bit of an amp sort of reverb and distortion. And I just thought it gives a bit of a kind of saturated edge to it, as well as,
because you can hear it. I think it's going into the bridge, there's the bit where your vocal's quite isolated, and on like the last few words that you say, you can really hear the like grainy fuzzy bits, but it's got some like chorus or modulation on it as well, right?
Exactly. So that's the thing with this, and it's really nice to like just push it hard and make it be that quite unusual atmosphere for it. Once the track's full, it's actually a bit distracting, so I just pulled it back a little bit. But it's at those particular the moments where the arrangement strips back anyway, that's a good chance to kind of let the interesting effects kind of come through more. So just cranking up that return on the amp reverb.
I was going to ask about the guitar solo, because this deep layer of fuzz that you put over the top, it really made me think of Muse, and I wondered if you'd kind of filled that brief that we gave you, or whether it was your own creativity.
I mean, I do love a bit of Muse. I just generally like making stuff noisy. So, and wanted generally to go for kind of just amp distortion on your guitars. Wanted to have that sound where it's just the sound of just a guitar going into an amp and a little bit of slapback and room on it. And that's enough. And it was like, what can we do to lift to vary the solo sound of it? So I'm a guitarist first, and we've got just a whole load of pedals here. And always, it's distortions and fuzzes in particular.
Yeah.
I've got a whole load them, and I feel like they all have their own character and all have their place.
Yeah.
And I particularly love the ZVEX Fuzz Factory.
Yeah.
Just the sort of the crispy velcro-y fuzz that you get on that. I thought worked well.
Definitely, you did really well putting life into it, because when I recorded that solo, I just recorded it sort of straight into the DAW, and it was fine. But listening now to the original, it sounds a lot more flat. And you really kind of gave
clean,
it that.
wasn't it?
Yeah,
As
it was
well.
quite clean.
Yeah.
So you really gave it that life and made it sound like I'd actually played through like a massive stack. So
Yeah.
well done, because that's some real magic you did there.
While we're on the topic of guitars as well, I remember you saying that we used the Tom Morello neural DSP one as well, which we're both
Tom Morello.
big Rage fans.
Yeah,
very cool.
I saw him at Download a couple of years ago and like wept. That's how much of a Tom Morello fan I am. So when I found out, I was so excited. I was so excited.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, his guitar sounds hench, right?
Yeah.
He's very good, and I think that the neural DSP, like the model of it, is fantastic. I mean, I just love that Marshall crunch sound.
Same.
I think it works really well. I keep saying about there being sort of a bluesiness to your track, and there's a kind of bluesiness, all the sort of pentatonic riffs that he does. It's sort of, it's not that it's the same, but I felt it was in a similar enough world that it sort of just spoke to me. And I also really like the delay that's kind of built into that thing based on his one, and the way that it doesn't tempo sync, so you can just have that little spacious sort of slapback, using sort of echo to get the depth rather than reverbs. And I thought, just thought it sounded fat.
Yeah, the guitars in the chorus really just jump out the speakers.
I use references like, and I was particularly using St. Vincent's as a reference. It's more of like a palate cleanser for my ears, sort of thing. I just keep going back to something which I know sounds good. If I sort of have wandered off too far with something, I use it as sort of a reset in a similar world to what I'm aiming for.
Because I remember when I came to visit you for the mix day, we were sitting there comparing the tracks, and like sonically St. Vincent does sound a bit differently. Like all the distortion in the big choruses is actually coming from like the bass. Not the guitars are actually quite clean. So yeah, the record did end up in quite a different place, but like we said, it was more the St. Vincent reference was more for like vibe than actual sonics.
Yeah, exactly. I use it more as a vibe, and more like imagine it like I'm listening to it in a Spotify playlist, and I've just heard that, and now I'm hopping onto yours.
Yeah.
And does yours sound, I don't know, weak or tinny, or does something feel way off? It doesn't need to be balanced in necessarily the same way. The song is different, the voice is different, the arrangement's different, but does it sound like it works alongside it? And does it just feel like the kick is totally missing by comparison, or something like that? Then you've done something wrong.
The drums is another one that they sounded like huge. I think that was one thing we did struggle to get when we were recording the song, that they sounded quite flat, and then when we heard them in the final mix, it was just really like beefy,
really punching their way out the
speakers.
Yeah. And again, making it sound really kind of organic, really kind
roomy,
of in the room.
That is, it's important, isn't it? And I liked the drum sound that you had, and it had some real punch to it. But I felt like it was kind of using samples for ambience, samples with plenty of room mics and overheads on to kind of just give it that spacious, because we did sort of thing.
Something worth I guess mentioning, that like we had quite a lot of chats before we handed over the song to mix, and we'd done quite a lot of talking about style and stuff, and you pointed us in the direction of like the Circles dry samples. Prior to that, it was a very kind of 90s kind of like pangy snare sound, I think, that we were sort of using, and you pointed us in the direction of like the Dead drums, the like Queens of the Stone Age sort of vibe. And all of a sudden it was like, this clicks with the bluesy sort of feel that we've got going on. And when we got to the final mix, they were sort of augmented even more, because I think I remember I gave you like the room mic, which we didn't have in the mix at all. That was like actually all the way down, and then it's like, he's actually working really well. and sounds massive.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that was the side of the sound that I felt was missing. I love those dead drum sounds, and the crisp, dry punch is sort of still coming from all of that. So it's sort of just trying to get the balance between the two, and using your overheads and just sort of samples in that sound.
Well, I think it was on the mix day actually, wasn't it, that you added the big like impact thump thing at the start of each.
Oh yes, yeah.
That's good.
And, and straight out the intro, it sort of thumps you. Really
yes, yeah. So it's an interview with Eric Valentine I saw a while ago that he, I'm sure it was with him, but he says there's like just some particular like drum sample he's used since the 80s, which he puts on beat ones of choruses and at the starts of tracks.
Yeah.
And since sort of knowing that he did that, I was like, oh yeah, it does just give you that a bit of welly on that beat one of a chorus, so that it just hits your chest a little more when you start the new section.
What you did with the intro in general, we just gave you this like mess of noise. Like to confess, we'd done the song and I did my thing where last minute I was just suddenly like, it needs this, and Toby was like, okay, well it needs to be sent tomorrow. I was like, I can hear it, but there was me panically struggling away for a couple of hours trying to just reverse and mash together
at the beginning,
a bunch of noise.
I was like, what are you doing? This sounds bonkers. And then I came back like an hour later and she'd made the sort of bare bones of the intro, which
but what you did with it, like you took what I could hear in my brain and you made it real, so thank you for that.
Much more
okay, a deadline is a good thing for creativity, isn't it? Like you just like, I have to do it for tomorrow, so whatever ideas I have, they're the ones that come through. It didn't give you much time to sort of rethink it, so it was clear to me what you were going for, this kind of wall of noise atmosphere, let it rise up to lead into beat one of the track. I felt like the stems were kind of doing a lot of the work there already. What I really love is the Waves Factory cassette plugin. I love the way that sort of warps, mangles it, and a bit of distortion as well. And there's a few moments, again, it's in these moments where where the arrangement's a bit more exposed. At that very intro, at the very end as well, with all the sort of delay tails, and again in the bridge section, to kind of just pump things into that, to give it that, it's more noise really, but it's got warmth to it, and it's
because there's a little moment, I think it's between like verse 1 and 2 in the song, where a guitar note like rings out. And
I was on the fret, I go boop, and then I think you did something. You added like a little tape moment to it.
Any plugin which does this, I'm all about. Is there's something random about it. You can't predict when it will do that little drop down. So you kind of get these like happy accidents within your render. I just think that's great.
When you gave us the track to master, you gave us 3 pre-masters just so you've got some random moments in there, and we sort of picked the intro, outro, and other parts of the song that had those happy accidents in. Yeah,
so if I kept on bouncing out, I wouldn't necessarily have that drop out in the same place. You take the ones that make you go, oh yeah, that's cool. It's a lovely little moment in it.
Yeah, it makes it exciting that it's like luck of the draw, same as people would have, back in kind of analog recording days. Like that recording is its own creature that can never be sort of replicated.
That's the sort of the magical thing about it, isn't it? It is a record of a particular moment.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Tell me more about how you went about producing the vocals.
So my first thought was the vocal performance was brilliant and really strong and really dynamic. There was just the odd line where I felt maybe just running out of breath, or just the odd little like moment. But you've got like phrases that seem to last a whole verse and things. Sometimes it's quite impressive.
Really backed myself into a wall with the writing. Someone listened to it and were like, "You really kitchen synced this song. Like you don't give yourself a moment to breathe." So
well, it's awesome, right? So the melody line's so inventive, and it kind of like it flows along. There's just the odd moment where I just felt like, oh, you're just running out of breath a little bit, so just a little bit of comping. I sort of felt like it's strong, and I want to keep the kind of natural thing of it. So once that's kind of edited and I felt like we had a good performance, we've got a couple of distressors here at the studio, and it's nice to run them through 2. One set quite quickly just to kind of catch the transients, and then one that's set to kind of do a bit more heavy lifting. And then that was the stem that we used for the lead vocal, and then used this amp simulator for the reverb, the idea of a kind of sort of distorted, roomy, slapback reverb on it. And you also had the printed backing vocal stem as well. And because it was already printed as a whole sort of one, I felt like actually I slammed it quite hard with some compression just to kind of get the kind of evenness of the whole chord, and because it kind of just comes in on that enough, it just felt like we could just slam that really hard and have it punch through with the vocals.
I really appreciate how you put the BVs quite high in the mix, actually. This one would always put them a little bit further down, so then when your mix came through, I was like, yes, this is what I was looking for, just this choir bursting through.
Yeah, well, it comes from the arrangement as well, right? So because it's really tight, really solid, big chord that just joins in on the word, it mixes itself. I'm intrigued to ask you a bit about the mastering.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really interesting collaborative process, this generally, because obviously it began with just you two, and that you recorded, tracked and produced everything to begin with. We had a little bit of back and forth with just a few arrangement tweaks. It was over with me, and I did a mix and some editing and stuff. Then you came and joined me for that second stage of the mix. I've done lots of mixes that I've sent to you, so I know what you do mastering wise. It was kind of interesting to have that process where, we could both be together and you could kind of sign off the mix, some things where you were suggesting maybe the guitars are a bit bright, and that's the kind of thing that you probably wouldn't have said about my mix before. You probably would have just adjusted it in the master, but we could actually tweak it there and get that sorted. I had like bus compression on, but sending off to mastering, I might well ease that off, but you were there. You didn't seem to mind it being there.
No, exactly.
So it always sounds great when you do stuff to my mixes. So what did you do?
Because I was in the room on the day, I was able to kind of hear what you'd done already. I think again it's a bit of a tricky one, because being my own band, I didn't want to go too far on the mastering. I just took it away as we'd heard it. I just did some like tiny bit of like EQ, sort of cleaning up the subby bottom end to make sure things were just in check. I did a little bit of work with the Sontech EQ. It's quite subtle, but that does have like a little bit of a box tone, so I just put that across it, and I do a little sort of mid-side trick where I just open up the top a bit, but that's more just to give the mix a little bit of space than anything. And then I use the acoustic Ash, which is a clipper that copies the Lavery Gold converters.
Nice.
It's quite a common one that I'll use on like rock songs. It just gives it a little bit of that edge, especially in like the mid-range, and that really made like the guitars jump out in the chorus more than they already were. The final limiter was the Fab Filter Pro L, and then again that was just doing like the cleanest limiting I could to not change the mix at all. You'd done quite a lot of containing the dynamics anyway in the mix.
Punchier and wider. That's what I felt, and I was like, no qualms with it being punchier and wider. I am interested to know the story about how the song came about.
I mean, Enough must be 10 years old?
Yeah, roughly. So it
something
was a song,
like that. It's an old song.
Solo song before it was an Infra Violet song.
Even back then, it was a little bit different to other stuff I'd written. Every now and then, I'd write something a little bit bluesy. I think there was some inspiration from the chord structure of Feeling Good, the harmonised scale.
I guess our new version has ended up in a similar place to the Muse one, where it's a big chorus.
Yeah. It's sort of come full circle, actually.
When we were doing more synthy stuff, I couldn't see it working with that sound that we used to do, but now we're doing more guitar-driven stuff. There was a place for it in that sound, so we decided like now was the right time to re-record it.
People who like our music or who have liked my music from before coming forward and being like, I still really like Enough.
Yeah.
It's kind of because of them that we've given it another shot, because it feels good to give it the potential and the chance that the song deserves.